The other side of the Rose Bowl was Oregon and the way that they just, I don't want to say didn't show up because that feels like it's taking away from what Ohio State did. But I think if you're an Oregon fan today, maybe just a college football fan in general, you're like, wait a second. Wasn't that the team that was like the number one seed in America, won the Big Ten, hadn't lost a game? How did this happen? Why was there this implosion? And the feeling for me is like whenever you have such a just belt to behind situation like Ohio State displayed yesterday against Oregon, it's usually not just one thing. Like I think you can point to a couple different things and say some of this, some of that, kind of just a imperfect recipe for the circumstances they had. The thing that jumped out the most, though, was the way the defense seemingly, from what I can tell watching the broadcast copy, had Dillon Gabriel in a little bit of a blender. That's a quarterback playing a lot of football now. And so for Jim Knowles in that secondary to what seemed like take away the quick throws that he wanted to have, that totally put Oregon into a spot they just don't want to play, which is, okay, we got to play drop back football. We have to maybe ad-lib a little bit more. We got to make our offensive line work a little more. Because we've said a lot on this show, like the Oregon offense is built to get the ball out of Dillon Gabriel's hands in like 2-ish seconds, 2.2 officially, but who's counting, and get the ball to a Tez Johnson, to an Evan Stewart, to whoever in space, let them work, let them make you miss, and have that be the way that you get down. When Ohio State was playing as locked down as they were on the back end, that gives Jack Sawyer, J.J. Tuimoloau some time to go get after Dillon Gabriel, and that's just never a good situation when you give those guys some permission to go rush the passer. So when you factor that in, you point to, I think, what happened early in the year for Oregon. Like that's kind of how it looked in my estimation. Everyone's talking about what's wrong with Oregon those first two games of the year. What was wrong with Oregon was whether it was the offensive line, whether it was Dillon Gabriel, they were not all the way synced up and able to get the ball out of Dillon Gabriel's hands quickly. And that's why they played so many close games early. So all Ohio State did, from my knowledge, again, watching the broadcast copy, essentially did the exact same thing that Oregon was forced to do early on. And the unfortunate part about that, if you're Oregon, is the talent level of an Ohio State is far superior to those teams you played early on in the year, where you're able to kind of find a way to collect yourself and get it together. College football sickos, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. This show, The Hard Count, college football, year-round ball, and nothing but ball. Now, this show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy, easy to use, easy to play, easy to withdraw what you win when you play at, no, sorry. It's, yeah, okay, my bad. Sorry, Cato. I'm throwing us off the loop here, dog.
Nothing I haven't done at the round table, man.
You're too gracious to me, brother. Too gracious. Okay. Here we go. Good to go?
Yeah.
Amazing. 3, 2, 1. College football sickos, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. On this show, The Hard Count, it's college football, nothing but college football all year round. Now, this show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Daily fantasy, easy to use, easy to play, easy to withdraw what you win. Follow us here. Use code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com. We're going to do our very best to make us all some money. Now, even if we don't, when you play with code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com, make yourself $50 in promo funds to then go ball out the rest of this playoff. So again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds at prizepicks.com. We appreciate y'all subscribing. We appreciate y'all using that code with our friends Prize Picks. Defensively, our producer here, Cato, he nailed this. Like the run defense was always a little bit, if you were to look a little bit more deeply at some of these games, maybe a cause for concern. The way that I feel about it is like the Step Brothers interview scene where they're interviewing in tuxedos, and after a certain series of events, the interviewer says, you know what, actually, the tuxedos are kind of messed up. After Oregon loses to Ohio State in the fashion they did and get run on the way they did, actually, I'm like, you know what? That Penn State game was a little bit messed up, where Nick Singleton and Katron Allen have their way. Actually, Purdue running for over 200 yards, scoring no points, but running for over 200 yards, that is a little messed up. And I think that's kind of what you look at with Oregon. But again, I don't think it's just one thing. It's that paired with the offense not being able to move the football, paired with I think overall looking like Ohio State is a star right now. That's the one more thing I'll say here. If you're talking about collection of errors, there's one more thing I'll say here. I wonder if the 20-plus days of rest for Oregon wasn't actually as helpful as maybe it was pitched to be. Having a bye is great, but having to jump in cold and play the best roster in America who's playing at a high level, who is all the way ramped up right now, and like they're operating at peak performance right now, for you to have no warm up and jump into that, it's never a bad thing to get rest. And I don't think that Oregon like had a bad game plan or wasn't prepped. I just don't think they were all the way ramped up. So is that game different if Oregon, doesn't get a bye and they catch them, later in the tournament? I don't know. But again, I think that was in some way, shape, or form a variable to keep an eye on. And quite frankly, man, Todd McShay nailed this. It's been something that's happened across this playoff. When you look at teams that have jumped on the other team that got a bye in that first round versus the team that played in the first round and kept the process, kept momentum, kept routine, and able to just kind of keep a good thing going. So I'll say this too for Oregon, man. They're not going anywhere. I know it's fun the day after and really during the game to say, man, Oregon was overrated. Dan Lanning is cooked. This team's no good. This roster's no good. It's like, let's all just breathe a little bit. They're still going to crush the portal. They are crushing the portal. They're still going to continue to recruit at the top 10 level. Oregon's not going anywhere. This is Dan Lanning's third year in Eugene. They're going to be just fine. They're going to be more than fine, I promise you. Give them some time. They're going to be okay. Unfortunate to draw Ohio State in the second round, just to say the quiet part out loud. If Oregon drew another team, hypothetically speaking, maybe it's different. But again, it is what it is. And Oregon will be, I have to believe, back in this situation at some point in time in the not-too-distant future.